I always trusted Kate. From the moment we met, it felt like everything just clicked. She had a beauty that was undeniable. Her long, dark hair framed a face that seemed both gentle and strong at the same time. Her deep green eyes had a warmth that made you feel safe, like you were the only person in the room. She had a natural elegance to her, but it was her smile that truly captivated me. It could light up even the darkest days. And the way she laughed, carefree and genuine, made me fall for her all over again every time. We built our relationship on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. We loved each other in a way that felt natural, without pretenses. We were partners in every sense of the word, and we shared everything. When we had Lily, our world grew even richer. We both loved being parents. Kate was the kind of mother who never left any stone unturned when it came to our daughter. She helped Lily with her schoolwork, read her bedtime stories, and took her to every dance recital, every sports game. We spent weekends together at the park, in our backyard, making memories. It wasn't just about being parents, it was about being a family, building a life full of laughter and love. At first, there was no doubt in my mind that our love was the real deal. We were in sync, a team, but over time, things started to change. It wasn't anything major at first, just small things that I tried to ignore. She became more focused on her work, staying late at the office, coming home tired, distant. I told myself it was just the pressure of her job. I wanted to believe that. After all, I was often away on business trips, so I wasn't always there to notice the little things. But deep down, something didn't feel right. I hated that feeling. It gnawed at me. The quiet suspicion that something was shifting between us, even though I couldn't pinpoint what it was. I was just back from a business trip, tired and hoping for a quiet evening with Kate. But when I walked into the kitchen, something caught my eye. Her phone was sitting face up on the counter, and there was a message from someone named Jake that I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I told myself to relax, maybe it was nothing. But as I glanced at the phone, the message flashed, "Can't wait for tonight. I'll be thinking of you." My mind raced, and every instinct told me something was off. I grabbed the phone and scrolled back through the conversation. The messages were intimate, flirtatious, and full of promises. "I'll make it worth your while," one of them read. I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting. Before I could process it, I heard the front door open. Kate walked in, wearing a confident smile. "Hey, babe, how was your trip?" she asked, as though everything was normal. But the smile quickly faded when she noticed me holding her phone. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Who's Jake?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Kate froze for a moment, then exhaled sharply, her shoulders slumping. "It's Jake." Look, I'm not going to lie to you," she said, her voice growing more direct. "I'm meeting him tonight. I promised him a night together, and I'm going." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. The bluntness of her words hit harder than anything I could have expected. "You're going? You're seriously telling me this like it's nothing?" I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. "We're married, Kate." She didn't flinch, her eyes meeting mine without shame. "I know what I promised him," she replied coolly, "and frankly, I don't owe you an explanation." I stood there, dumbfounded, unable to move, the anger rising in my chest like a storm. I wanted to shout, to scream at her, but something inside me just broke. I had never expected this, never imagined Kate would be so brazen, so indifferent. She picked up her purse, glancing at me one last time. "I'll be back later," she said, turning toward the door. And with that, she walked out, leaving me standing in the kitchen, feeling utterly alone. I stood there, staring at the door she had just walked through. The room felt empty, cold. My mind was spinning. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had always trusted Kate, trusted her completely, and now, I was standing there like a fool. How could she do this to me? I paced around the house, my thoughts racing. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let her get away with this. She had humiliated me, thrown our marriage away so casually. If she thought she could just walk out and leave me broken, she was wrong. I was furious, so furious that the idea of revenge started to consume me. She wanted excitement? Fine, I'd give her something to remember. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number of an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Ryan was a guy I knew from college, someone who wasn't afraid to break a few rules. I explained the situation, keeping my voice steady, though I could feel the anger in every word. You need help with something? Ryan asked, his voice calm but interested. I took a deep breath. Yeah, I need you to make her jealous. I need to show Kate that I can have what I want, too. Ryan chuckled. I'll see what I can do. I hung up the phone and felt a rush of adrenaline. I was planning to make Kate feel what I was feeling, betrayed, humiliated. I would make sure she knew I wasn't just some man she could walk all over. Tonight, she would see the consequences of her actions, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. As I thought about my plan, a small voice inside me asked if this was the right thing to do, but I quickly shoved it aside. This was about justice, about making her understand how much she had hurt me. She wasn't going to just waltz off with no consequences. That night I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head, the way Kate had looked at me. So cold and unaffected, as if what we'd shared meant nothing at all. I'll be back later, she'd said, as if she were going to the store or out for drinks with a friend. But I knew where she was. I knew who she was with. I walked into the bar where I was meeting Ryan. He was already there, sitting at a corner booth with a smug look on his face, as if he'd been waiting for this moment to arrive. As I sat down across from him, I felt a rush of anger, and it was almost comforting. It gave me something to focus on. You're sure about this? I asked, my voice low. I needed to hear it again, even though part of me knew I was already in too deep. This is the only way I can make her feel what I'm feeling, right? Ryan leaned back in his seat, a casual smile on his face. I'm sure. Man, you want to make her regret what she did? You gotta show her that you're not just some guy she can walk over, that you can have what you want too. I wasn't sure why, but hearing him say that made it feel almost justified. I wasn't being petty. I was taking control. Okay, let's do it, I said, more to myself than to Ryan. He pulled out his phone and started typing quickly. I'll send a couple of messages. You've got your plan, right? He raised an eyebrow, checking in with me. I nodded. Yeah, I'll keep her thinking I'm having a good time. Maybe send a picture or two. Let her know she's not the only one who can have fun. Ryan grinned. That's the spirit. You show her that she doesn't control everything. I'll make sure the girls are good to go. I was about to reply when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kate. How's your night going?
My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to steady my breath. She's already texting me. After what she did, I tried to keep my voice, even when I replied. It's good, just out with a friend, having a drink. I'm sure you're busy with Jake, though. I didn't even know why I said that. The words slipped out before I could stop them, and for a moment, I was hit with a wave of satisfaction. But then, Elle crept in. Was I going too far? Was this really who I wanted to be? But then my phone buzzed again. I'm glad you're having fun. I'll be back soon. I could feel my pulse quicken. She wasn't even pretending to care. Fine, I thought. If she wants to play this game, I'll play. Ryan chuckled from across the table, reading the exchange over my shoulder. She's already trying to save face. Don't let her. You've got this. Man. I took a deep breath, trying to push the growing sense of unease aside. I know. I just want her to know that she can't just walk away from everything. I had sent on a message that would change everything. Just met someone. You'll be jealous when you see who it is. I'll make sure to send you a picture. The moment I hit send, I felt a rush of power but also an uncomfortable knot in my stomach. What was I doing? Was this really me? Ryan watched me with a knowing smile. Now we wait. The satisfaction I felt after sending the message quickly faded, replaced by a knowing feeling of guilt. I had crossed a line. I wanted to hurt Kate, but I also knew deep down that I was hurting myself in the process. But it was too late to back out now. I had already gone too far, and when the guilt crept in, I pushed it aside, telling myself this was about making Kate feel the weight of her betrayal. If she thought she could just walk away without consequences, I'd make sure she knew otherwise. That's when the idea hit me, something that would make her hurt even more, something she would never see coming. My daughter, Lily, she had been staying with my parents for a couple of days, but it was time to bring her into this. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but I felt like I needed a way to force Kate's hand, to make her feel the sting of what she had done. I picked up the phone and dialed Lily's number. Hey, sweetie, it's Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. though my heart was pounding. "Hi, Dad, when are you coming to get me?" Lily's cheerful voice filled me with a strange sense of sadness. She had no idea what was going on, and she shouldn't have to. "I was thinking of picking you up tomorrow," I said, trying to sound normal. "But listen, I need you to do something for me, just a little thing, okay?" "What is it?" she asked, curiosity in her voice. I hesitated for a moment. "When you come back home, I need you to act like everything's normal. Don't ask Mom about where I've been or what's been going on. Just act like you don't know anything." I could hear her pause, probably trying to understand what I meant. "Okay, Dad, I can do that, but why?" "Just trust me, sweetie. I'll explain everything later," I said, my voice tight. "Just keep things normal when you get back." I hung up the phone, feeling a pang of regret. I didn't want to involve Lily in this mess, but I couldn't help it. The thought of Kate seeing her daughter and realizing that I was still in control made me feel better, even if it was a cruel thought. The plan was starting to feel like a slow descent into darkness, but I couldn't stop myself. Kate had betrayed me, and if she wanted to destroy everything, then I'd make sure she felt the weight of it all. I'd make her see that I wasn't the weak one here. I wasn't the one who was going to lose. And using Lily, as twisted as it felt, would remind her of what really mattered: family, something Kate had seemed to forget. The next few days were a whirlwind. I felt like I was living in two different worlds, and where I was pretending everything was normal, and the other where I was consumed by anger and betrayal. Each time I saw Kate, I put on a mask. We went through the motions, acting like everything was fine, but the tension between us was palpable. The more I saw her, the angrier I became. I could barely look at her without remembering what she had done. But then there was Lily. Every time I saw her, I felt the weight of my actions. She didn't deserve this. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of a war I had started. She was just a child, and here I was, using her to get back at her mother, and not at me. There were moments when I wanted to tell her everything, apologize, and explain how everything had gone wrong, but I couldn't. I couldn't show weakness. Kate, meanwhile, seemed to be going through her own transformation. The carefree attitude she'd shown with Jake was gone. She was quieter, more reserved. Sometimes I catch her staring off into space, as if lost in thought. Part of me wondered if she was starting to realize the weight of what she had done. One evening, she came home late again, and I could tell she was on edge. She wasn't even trying to hide it. I decided it was time to confront her, to put everything out in the open. When she walked in, I didn't wait for her to say anything. I was done playing games. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. She frowned. Her eyes shifted, and for a moment, she looked guilty, like a deer caught in headlights. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to act casual, but I could see through it. "You know exactly what I mean," I said, my tone growing sharper. "Jake, who is he really?" Kate sighed, as if she were tired of hiding the truth. She set her day down, rubbing her forehead. "It doesn't matter," she muttered. "I made a mistake. A huge one." I stood there, my fists clenched at my sides. "A mistake," I repeated, my voice rising. "You betrayed me, Kate. You promised me something, and you threw it all away." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I don't know how it got this far." I could see that she was hurting, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. The pain inside me was too deep. "You don't get to apologize now. You don't get to act like it's all going to be okay. It's not." Kate took a deep breath and stood up, walking over to me. Her voice softened. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've messed up, but I want to fix this. If you let me." For a moment, I thought about it. I thought about what we had before, the love we'd shared. Could we get past this? Could I forgive her? But then I remembered the betrayal, lies, and I knew the answer. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said, my voice heavy with finality. Kate didn't say anything, but I saw the tears in her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I was the one who needed to heal. The days after our conversation felt like an endless tug-of-war. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened, about what we once had and what it had turned into. Kate tried to reach out, to talk things through, but I kept my distance. Every time I saw her, the anger resurfaced, and it became harder to control. Then one night, everything came to a head. Kate had been unusually quiet all evening, and I could tell she was struggling with the weight of what we were going through. She sat her day across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes downcast, not looking at me, as if she was waiting for me to say something. Finally, I couldn't take the silence anymore. "I can't keep doing this, Kate," I said, my voice rough. "I don't know how to move past it. I don't know how to forget what you did." Kate's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out as if to touch me, but I pulled away. I wasn't ready to let her in, not yet. "I never meant to hurt you," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "I don't even know why it happened. I was confused. I was lost, and I hurt you because I didn't know how to fix myself. I'm sorry." Her apology hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I was torn between wanting to comfort her and wanting to scream at her. How could she be sorry now? Was it too little, too late? "I don't think I can do this anymore, Kate," I said, my voice trembling despite myself. "I can't keep living in the shadow of this. It's destroying me, and I'm not sure I even recognize you anymore." She sobbed, her hands clutching at her chest. "Please, don't say that. Please. I love you. I swear, I do. I just need you to forgive me. Please, I'll do anything." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I almost believed her. I wanted to believe her, but deep down, something told me that no matter how much I wanted it, forgiveness wasn't going to be enough. Trust had been shattered, and I couldn't see a way back. I stood up, turning my back to her. "I need space. I need to figure out what I want." Kate didn't say anything more. She just sat there, staring at me, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I couldn't look at her anymore. As I walked out of the room, I realized that this was the breaking point. There was no going back, no easy fix. The trust was gone, and so was the love I thought we had. It hurt more than I could explain, but I knew I had to let go, for both of us. Kate didn't follow me. She just sat there, alone in the quiet of our broken home, and I was left wondering how we had gotten here, how everything we had built had crumbled so completely. But I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't keep living this way. The following weeks were a blur. Kate and I lived in the same house, but it felt more like we were strangers than partners. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. We avoided each other as much as possible, each of us trapped in our own thoughts. Kate tried to talk to me, tried to get me to understand her pain, but each time I shut her out. I couldn't escape the images of her with Jake, the way she laughed with him, the way she looked at him as if I didn't exist. The betrayal was still fresh in my mind, and no amount of apologies seemed to make it better. One evening, I found myself sitting alone on the couch, staring at the wall. My thoughts were a mess, and the silence of the house was deafening. I could hear Kate in the other room, moving around, but it felt like we were on different planets. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her how much she had hurt me, how I couldn't understand why she had done it, but I was exhausted, emotionally drained. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't continue living in a broken marriage, pretending like things would magically get better. The trust was gone, the love had faded, and I couldn't bear the thought of staying with someone who had betrayed me so completely. I called a lawyer. The decision was made. There was no turning back. Kate tried to talk to me, tried to convince me that we could still fix things, but I was resolute. She came to me that evening, her face flushed with anxiety. "Please," she begged, "don't do this. We don't need to make this messy. We can still work things out. I'm sorry, please just listen." But I couldn't listen to her anymore. Every apology felt empty. Every word she said sounded like an excuse. I had heard enough, and I was done. "I'm hiring a lawyer, Kate," I said firmly, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. "We're getting a divorce." Her eyes widened, and for the first time in a long while, I saw real fear in her face. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling, "don't make this so hard. We can make it work. For Lily's sake, please, don't turn this into a battle." I shook my head. "It's already a battle. Kate, you chose your path. Now we deal with the consequences." Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to touch my arm. "You're really doing this? You're really going to tear this family apart?" I pulled my arm away, feeling a surge of anger. "You did that, not me," I snapped. "You broke this family. Kate, I'm just taking the next step to fix my own life." She stood there, staring at me, not knowing what to say. She wasn't used to seeing me like this, cold, indifferent, and unyielding. I wasn't the man she had married, but I wasn't the man she had betrayed either. That man was gone. Later that night, I sat her down with Lily. She had been quiet over the past few weeks, but she knew what was happening. She knew the truth, and to my relief, she was on my side. When I told her about the divorce, she didn't seem surprised. She hugged me tightly and said, "I think it's the right thing, Dad. I just want you to be happy." Hearing her say that made something inside me break. My little girl, the one I had tried to protect from all of this, was now supporting me. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of comfort in her words, even as my heart ached for the future we were about to face. Kate tried to make her final plea the next morning. She came to me, looking desperate, her voice soft and pleading. "Please, we don't have to do this the hard way. Let's try mediation. We can settle everything without dragging it out." But I stood firm. "No, Kate, it's done." The look on her face was one of disbelief, but I didn't flinch. The woman I had once loved was now a stranger to me. I had no more room for her excuses, no more room for her manipulation. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to change it. As for Lily, she was quiet but resolute. I could see the pain in her eyes, but I also saw the strength. She knew this was the right decision, and deep down, so did I. We were moving on. By the time the divorce proceedings had reached their climax, I had already hired a top-tier lawyer, David, someone who knew exactly how to handle this kind of case. We had been working together for months, piecing together every shred of evidence, exposing the financial manipulation Kate had carried out behind my back. It wasn't easy, but I was determined. I couldn't let her get away with this. Kate, however, wasn't giving up easily. Her lawyer, a slick, well-dressed man named Richard, worked closely with Jake, trying everything they could to swing the case in her favor. Jake, ever the opportunist, played his part, trying to convince me that Kate deserved compensation for emotional distress. He argued that the affair was a mistake, that it shouldn't define her future, and that I should be more lenient. She should not be left with nothing, Jake insisted, his voice sharp with frustration. "We're only asking for half of what you've accumulated." She gave up her career, her life, for this marriage. Don't you think that deserves something? My lawyer, David, didn't flinch. He stood up from his seat and addressed the court, his voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, Mr. Smith, it's not about what she gave up, it's about what she took. And that, Your Honor, is where we stand. Kate's actions have consequences, and those consequences cannot be swept under the rug." Richard tried to interrupt, but David was ready. He laid out the case, systematically presenting evidence that Kate had been siphoning off money into hidden accounts, redirecting funds, and even purchasing property in her name alone, something I had suspected for months. Each piece of evidence hit like a hammer. He revealed the bank statements, showing large transfers of money to offshore accounts. He showed the deed to the house, where Kate had secretly added her name without my knowledge. There was no hiding from the truth anymore. The courtroom was tense as David finished his argument, walking confidently towards the judge. "Your Honor, we've shown that Kate has been financially deceptive. She took advantage of the trust I placed in her, and now she's asking for more than she deserves. We ask that you rule in my client's favor, giving him the lion's share of the marital assets." Kate's face grew pale as David spoke. She tried to keep her composure, but I could see the cracks beginning to show. She leaned over to Jake, whispering something, her hands shaking. Jake tried to look calm, but his jaw was clenched. "This isn't fair," he muttered under his breath. Then the judge spoke. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented by both parties. Given the circumstances, including the clear financial deceit and that infidelity, I rule in favor of the plaintiff. The marital assets will be divided as follows: 70% to the plaintiff and 30% to the defendant." There was a stunned silence in the courtroom. I could see the disbelief in Kate's eyes as the reality of the decision sank in. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at Jake, who was seething, but there was nothing they could do. The law had spoken. "Your Honor, please." Kate finally spoke, her voice shaking. "This isn't fair. I worked for this. I deserve more." David stood up once more, his expression unwavering. "The court has ruled. This matter is settled." I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm wash over me. I had won, and it wasn't just the assets. It was the satisfaction of knowing that Kate's deception had been exposed for all to see. She had tried to manipulate me, to get away with her lies, but the truth had come to light. As we walked out of the courtroom, I could hear Kate's voice, pleading with Jake. "This isn't over," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "We'll appeal. We can't let him take everything." Jake didn't respond. He was still glaring at me, his face twisted in anger, but it didn't matter. The decision was final, and I was walking away with the majority of the assets. "David, thank you. I said quietly as we stepped into the hallway. David gave me a small nod. You fought for what was right, and the truth won in the end. This was just the final step toward regaining my life. The years of betrayal, the heartbreak, and the loss were not erased by money or property. But at least now, I could begin to rebuild, to move on. And Kate, she had been left with only 30% of what we had built together. The life she had worked so hard to maintain was crumbling, and no amount of money or pleading would change that. I had never imagined this would happen. After everything that had transpired in court, Kate was still desperate to win, no matter the cost, but I never expected her to go this far. Jake, her lover, came up with the idea. He suggested she seduce Richard, her lawyer, believing that he could be the key to turning the divorce in her favor. Kate, always willing to use whatever she had to get what she wanted, didn't hesitate for a moment. She knew how to manipulate people, how to make them believe what she needed them to believe. And Richard was no different. He was ambitious, eager to make sure his high-profile client was satisfied, and Kate knew exactly how to exploit that. She began scheduling more meetings with Richard, under the guise of discussing legal matters. But soon, those meetings turned into something far more personal. What started as professional consultations became intimate encounters in hotel rooms, where Kate and Richard would indulge in their passions, with no concern for the legal implications. It wasn't just about her case anymore. It was about using Richard to her advantage, knowing that he would fight harder for her in the divorce if they shared something more than just business. I didn't learn about it right away. At first, I thought it was just more of Kate's usual manipulation, and I wasn't sure if I could trust what I was hearing. But then, I received an anonymous tip, a message with an address and a time saying that Kate and Richard had been spotted together in a high-end hotel. At first, I thought it was just a cruel rumor, but the message had been so detailed, so specific, that I felt a need to find out for myself. I didn't waste any time. I hired a private investigator to follow Kate and Richard, to confirm or deny what I had heard. The results came quickly, and they were damning. The investigator sent me the photographs, clear, undeniable proof that Kate and Richard were not just talking about the case. They were together in that hotel room, entangled in each other's arms, caught in the act of making love. The photographs didn't lie. My stomach churned as I saw them, knowing that Kate had crossed a line I never thought she would. The betrayal stung worse than I had imagined. Not only had she been unfaithful to me, but she had used Richard for her own gain, just as she had always used others. I had thought she might still have some integrity left, but now I knew the truth. She was willing to sacrifice anything, even her dignity, to get what she wanted. Jake had known. Of course, he was the one who had suggested it. After all, he was fully aware of what was happening, and if anything, it probably encouraged it. This wasn't just a game of love or lust. It was a calculated move, part of Kate's strategy to manipulate everyone around her for her own gain. And as I stood there, holding those photos in my hands, I realized how far Kate was willing to go to destroy everything I had once believed in. But it was over. She had made her choice, and now I would make mine. After the court ruling, Kate wasn't ready to accept defeat. A few days later, she came to me, begging for an appeal, insisting that everything could still be fixed. We can make it right, she pleaded, her voice filled with false hope. I did this for use for our family. But I was resolute. No, Kate, it's over. You've ruined everything, I replied coldly. She tried to argue, to manipulate the situation again, but I wasn't going to fall for it this time. You've lost it all, and it's not going to change. I then met with David, my lawyer, to make sure Kate's appeal wouldn't go through. David assured me that it had no grounds and that the ruling was final. There was no chance of reversing it. A few days later, Richard, Kate's lawyer, came to see me. He suggested we settle things quietly, but I wasn't interested. You were part of all this, Richard. There's nothing left for you, I said, sending him away without another word. The final step came unexpectedly. After all the manipulation, the court battles, and the finality of our divorce, there was still one thing that remained: the house, the one place that still held some sentimental value for Kate, and I wasn't going to let her use it against me anymore. I decided to buy out her share of the house. It was a clean, simple transaction. I contacted David, my lawyer, and he took care of all the legal aspects. It didn't take long. The paperwork was signed, and within a week, the money was transferred into Kate's account. When the deal was finalized, I stood in front of the house for a moment, looking at the place that had been both our home and the site of so much pain. I knew that now. It was truly mine, all of it. Kate didn't even try to fight it. There were no more arguments, no more attempts to hold onto the last thread of power she thought she had. Once the deal was done, she stopped trying to contact me. The phone calls ceased. The texts stopped coming. She knew she had nothing left to leverage. It was over. The house was mine, completely, and with that, Kate's final connection to me was severed. She couldn't use it to manipulate me anymore. She couldn't come back and demand anything. She had lost everything. I felt a strange sense of peace as I looked at the house one last time. It was a symbol of everything I had overcome. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the years of Liesel of it was behind me now. Kate, for her part, disappeared. No more attempts to reach me, no more demands. She had nothing left to take, and for the first time in years, I felt free.